Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, welcome to the Mead House. Thanks for listening to episode number 195. Hey, you know, I was just milking the goat out back when Jeff and Ryan rolled up, and I'll probably have to fetch more water from the creek after they leave. Hey, my name is JD Webb, and you're at the Mead House for the next 90 minutes. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House at all of these following locations. The podcast is out there everywhere: iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, on and on and on and on and on, Amazon Music even. You can find them all listed on the front page of the website. That's themeadhouse.com for more locations. Hey, in this episode, keeping up with this week's itinerary, home brewing in the pandemic, we'll talk to another masterclass, medal-winning home brewer to see what the impact of the lockdowns have had on his brewing, longtime friend. And another guest who might as well get a room here at the house, Nathan Stegman, joins us tonight. Hey, in segment 2, MacGyver. You know, it was one of my favorite TV shows back in the day. Now we're not going to talk about how far back, but this dude, I mean, this is a guy who was able to bail himself out of some difficult situations using nothing more than the baling wire, great tape, whatever was in his pockets on a shelf, laying on the ground in a closet somewhere. And I wonder how many couch potato dads were inspired by that. Hey, what's your MacGyver like these days? We'll give that a dive into tonight in segment 2. In segment 3, of course, this is a social club. This is where we try to answer questions from mead makers with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house. All that and more here at the Mead House. But first, I need to put this one on a pre-recorded deal too. So I just reach over to the mixer, punch the pad, and this thing plays. But hey, thanks to all the Mead House key holders for supporting the show, the podcast. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts out to send out to you, plus a listing of key holder content only. So to get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the links in the show notes. What are we drinking? Two-fisting it here tonight, guys. I have a mead in one hand. I don't know that I'd even call these meads. I mean, I guess I would. It's made with honey and water and whatnot, but this is one that I've been kind of hanging on to for as long as possible. This is the Power of Love from Sap House. This is a wildflower honey aged in apple brandy barrels for 2 years. And let me tell you something. This is slowly but surely becoming one of my favorites, next to that other one that they do, aged in bourbon barrels. But this is the aroma on it is like crisp, almost Granny Smith-like apples. Oh my God! And the flavor is just very brandy-like. There's a sweetness up front that kind of carries through. You get a lot of apple flavor in the mid palate. You get some of that barrel flavoring coming through late. That finishes on a little bit on the dry side, which is kind of nice. This is a good little after dinner sipper, along with my bourbons and tequilas that I like to drink. So that's what I'm doing in the one hand. In the other hand, I'm doing just a plain old whiskey tonight. This happens to be Gentleman Jack from Jack Daniels. Now, here's the reason why. And I thought I would give some folks a heads up. A lot of people out there like to age their meads and whatnot, or incorporate some kind of bourbon whiskey or something into it. This is one that I would put at the top of the list if you wanted to do some, add some bourbon flavors or whatever to your mead. Soak some wood in it. Absolutely, I would do that. This is a little bit different than the regular Black Label Jack Daniels. I think this is a little more milder, has some more distinct flavors in it. Not as sweet as the Black Label, but here's the deal. There are three things that you should be looking for when you want to incorporate bourbon into a mead, because remember, it's going to be quite diluted. So it's not like you're going to pour a bottle of bourbon into your mead and have it, bourbon-like. All right, the bourbon-like characters are going to be the vanillins, the caramels and brown sugars, and of course the barrel char. Those are the three components that I think you need to be looking for when you want to incorporate a bourbon flavor or bourbon-like flavor. If you soak your wood or whatever, I think that's what you might be looking for if you want to age your mead that way. So on Jack Daniels Gentleman Jack, it's a perfectly good whiskey to do that with. I highly recommend it. It's one of my go-tos for aging wood in, and even though it's not a bourbon, it's still a whiskey, and I do enjoy whiskey on occasion. So that's what I'm doing here tonight. And Jeff, what did you put in your cup?
So I have two different meads in front of me tonight, as usual. One of them is also a Sap House barrel aged. I'm having some of the Ecstasy of Gold. That was the tequila barrel aged. Mm-hmm. And I love that. It's not a pronounced tequila flavor. You're not drinking a tequila, but it has all the notes of a tequila with the strong honey backbone. So yeah, no, it's just a real nice, pleasant sipper for a kind of warm evening like tonight. Mm-hmm. Then in my other glass, I have something I just recently bottled. I have a Riesling and Orange Blossom Piment that I made.
Ooh.
And so this one was interesting. I discovered over the course of aging it and getting it ready to bottle that the Riesling grapes that I used in this have a really strong acid character to them. And I got to the back sweetening phase of this, and wow, I'm putting so much honey into this to try and balance out the amount of acid going into this, that I'm really, really, really bumping up the body of this mead in a way that's just, it's not what I want out of a white wine. So I did a finishing step I have never tried before, and it actually came out really, really nicely. I diluted a 6-gallon batch with almost a half gallon of distilled water.
Oh, wow.
And it toned down the amount of the acid, just diluting it real slightly, and it brought the honey to the forefront. So, I mean, I was shocked that it worked out. It lowered the volume, not the volume, the body of the mead to the point where it's a little bit more in that kind of white wine zone. So, yeah, this is something I tried on a whim, and it worked out fantastically.
Wow, sounds good. So what else you drinking? Oh, that's it?
That's third week in a row. Nope, only two.
Okay.
Only two.
Ryan, what did you put in your cup tonight, buddy?
It's the weather it can be funny up at the Mead House in Norris. I think it was last week I was talking about how we were getting our first big thunderstorms of the year, and meaning it was, in like the mid 70s, temperature wise. Today, woke up to a really hard frost and flurries all day. There's actually a dusting of snow out on the ground right now. So about a 40-degree swing since the last time the meat house convened. And yeah, and kind of in the funny there. All right, so our guest tonight, we did a little bottle exchange, and surprise, surprise, I opened one of his braggots. I am drinking Tranquilitas, which is a braggot with Brazilian wildflower honey, golden carapils, and Azacca hops, tipping the scales at about 6%. And man, this is absolutely delicious. It's a braggot. It's dangerously close to a Ryan braggot. It's very clean. Got some really nice, the beer qualities, but it's also married very well with the honey as well. So we call this a happy marriage. Because I also, the honey is right there, and I've got a couple others backing it up, JD, and when I get to those, I'll talk about them.
Sounds good.
But yeah, let's bring our guest in here before I talk too much more about his stuff. As JD said, we are continuing our home brewing in the pandemic series this week, and master home mead maker Mr. Nathan Stiegman returns to the mead house for I think at least his third time. Like you said, you might have to give him a key one of these days, JD.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he's got a key. I think he's already got a key. He just needs an official room. So, welcome back to the show, Nathan, my friend. And how are you this evening? And what's in your cup tonight?
Oh, doing quite well. Gosh, how long has it been since we talked? Yeah, it's like you said, 35 degrees and dropping. Yeah, our temperature is changing up and down in Minnesota. Been a bit back and forth, oddly, the frosty snow from this morning. But tonight, I guess I'm kind of doing a kind of a halfway, braggot bonanza here, courtesy of Ryan. In addition to a commercial mead that I've got, I did try out what I believe is one of his umami, if I'm saying that correctly. The braggot made Tiny Bubbles. It's got some nice earthly caramel, roast coffee notes, a bit of sweetness, some subtle salinity, some Maillard, almost steak-like, but I guess my vocabulary is kind of fumbling over itself. The fig raisin, plum-like qualities, and it's got a noticeable alcohol level. So the legs are showing nicely on this, Ryan. A little bitter finish that kind of molds out really nicely. I feel like it's very interesting trying to dissect all these combinations of flavors for sure that you put forth. So probably one of the more complex braggots that I've had from you. So, and then another cup, I got one of Ryan's Blueprint projects, the buckwheat. I guess it's a double dame, very tasty dark chocolate caramel notes. Malty complements well with the buckwheat honey there. And then on the other much lighter side, on the mead side, I've got a commercial mead from Apis Meadery out of Carnegie, Pennsylvania. It's a strawberry balsamic mead. It has a unique flavor. Had a little correspondence with the mead maker, and haven't really honed into much of their process, but it has a flavor. It reminds me of a little bit of cinnamon, vanilla, a tart punch. It's got strawberry puree, knotweed, wildflower honey, and this is oddly enough aged in Moderna vinegar for a while. So not judging the book by the cover, I got to say I'm also taken with some of the artwork. There's a lot of artwork on a variety of different mead bottles of commercial meaderies. They got on the front of this bottle a rhinoceros and a flying bee costume on the bottle. So that's that's good for a laugh as well as good for a taste too.
Wow. Yeah, balsamic vinegar, one of my favorites. What do they call it? Caprese with a tomato and
Caprese salad.
Yeah, baby, I love that stuff with a good balsamic. And I've often wondered, how could you incorporate this wonderful flavor into a mead? Wouldn't that be odd?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Working on it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, maybe the way to go is in a barrel. I mean, they age that stuff in barrels for years and years and years, you know.
Absolutely.
To get your hands on one, or I don't know, you know, soaking wood in balsamic vinegar, would that work? I don't know. Something sounds like a 1 gallon experiment coming up.
Been working on it. Had some inspiration here recently on some connected TV shows and apps that we send that. What's it? Stanley Tucci was Searching for Italy show. He's going through Italy, trying all these sorts of foods, and he had one in Modena. So it's a wonderful area of balsamic vinegar. So working on it. See if that might be something to try in the future here.
Yeah, you know, not to turn the show into a cooking show, but if you haven't seen that series, Stanley Tucci is an actor from way back. You would recognize, I can't name some of the films he's been in, but I'm sure you would recognize him. He's been around the horn a few times. He does this, 6 or 7 series all through Italy. He basically covers all of the regions in Italy. And it's a food show, but I tell you, I learned quite a bit about the Italian cuisine just watching the show. That's a CNN. You can get it on demand. That's where I've been watching it from. It's a CNN production, or at least it's broadcast on CNN. But I think there was only 6 parts aired, I think, or 7. I don't recall. But I think they're still available, at least in my neck of the woods, on Spectrum Cable on the on-demand. So if you haven't seen it, you got to check that out. It's awesome. It's simply awesome.
Absolutely. They're very, very inspiring on the whole end of that balsamic section, the barrel aging processes that they use too.
Yes, very much, yeah. Ryan, I know you got a list. You might as well start now.
Yeah, so the series that we're in here, this set, is talking with home mead makers and seeing how the last year has shaped their mead making. People have been all over the spectrum. Now, Nathan is, he was already at one end of the spectrum, and I'm not sure if the last year has brought you even further or what. But Nathan brought me over an 8-pack of meads, and there was just stuff all over the spectrum, from the braggots that I talked about to Tej and Polish and stuff that he made in his sauna. His
it got that cold. It got that cold during the winter. Kinda. Jesus. Go ahead. Go on. Right to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
his stuff aged on grape pomace and just all, mustard blossom honey and Peruvian ground cherries and smoked braggots and pineapples and jalapenos and all kinds of stuff. So like I said, all over the place. So Nathan, why don't you tell us, I guess first of all, just overall, what's your mead making been like in the last year? Has it changed at all, or has it? Have you just kind of been? Is this what you would have done anyway?
Yeah, I guess I don't know on that end. You're right. I am all over the place. Kind of a mead scramble, so to speak. I do remember going to work one day.
How about just have you been doing as much mead making as you think you would have?
I guess I feel like I have kind of sort of. If that's an answer, but I've ramped up my mead making experimentation a bit. I might be a little more selective on the honeys I use. Working from home to that that lockdown aspect and whatnot. I've got a couple children at home, one in pre-K, another in second grade. And, you know, I know I'd be around just so to speak to monitor things a bit more, I guess, because of that, but also for more engagement. The kids interested in mixing and stirring things up with supervision, of course, no bottling, but helping. I guess in between things like, you know, playing a lot of Name That Tune with Alexa. Sorry if I just booted her up, if anyone's listening to this out loud. We also play a lot of Floor Is Lava in the basement with the kids. So in between all of that, my process, you know, I get the kids involved. They love honey. I guess, you know, over the course of the past year, they've enjoyed more of this as we kind of moved on. So, and it was cold back in those winter or spring months. And I did those odd things like making my first sauna mead and, you know, raising the heat of my sauna with a couple of different honey varieties I liked, and, you know, trying out the Kveik yeast and the Orland farmhouse yeast and whatnot, and seeing what happens. I guess through somewhat creative boredom, as it were, just trying to find other nuances and challenges outside of my manual dexterity of, you know, swapping out a new dishwasher, replacing the garbage disposal. You know, just fortes being what they are, just trying to do something different. And I guess that's, you know, idle hands, as it were. So I didn't make a sourdough. Good grief, I didn't attempt to make a sourdough during this time. I just didn't really see much of the point of it. But I do remember, you know, the mad rush on the yeast at one time, yeast production being questionable for some of the companies and all this. And it's like, okay, well, let's make some mead. Try to see what we can do to pass the time, so to speak. So I did get a little bit out there. And braggots were a thing. I guess I just got into those a little bit more, you know, up the past several months or so into the year to break up that traditional experimental meads. Just finding that nuance of the happy marriage of honey and beer, like Ryan was saying there.
I was just going to ask you what. I was just going to ask you what was your inspiration behind getting more involved in braggots?
I got to say, Mead House. Yeah. And also, you know, there's a number of folks in our homebrewing club, Minnesota Homebrewers Association, that really like braggots. But, you know, in particular, I got to say, the Mead House definitely, and Ryan, definitely some inspiration around trying to delve more thoroughly into the braggot sphere, so to speak.
How do you see, you guys all live up there, Mead House North. You know, it's kind of mead country, I guess, if you really want to take a countrywide look at it. Do you think is braggots becoming more talked about, do you think? Do you think it's becoming more prevalent? Are people starting to look into it more, brew it more? What do you hear up in, I guess, the heartland of mead country, huh? Minnesota, right?
Sounds like a John Denver song. I don't know.
I don't play guitar anymore.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, we've been continuing to degree in the experimental modes. I guess a lot of folks we like our beer here for sure, and kind of that easy transition over to with mead making being transformative. You know, having the braggots stand out. You know, I guess there's a lot of things that we're doing here and trying new things. There's still that sugar belt aspect. I might try to make some braggots in the, you know, dry to sweet. It's kind of the versatile end of depending on what you decide to work with on the malt basis and whatnot. So I definitely think they're growing in popularity. And of course, even Mead House in particular, you know, the folks that are listening to this have been certainly inspired by everything you've been talking about. And I definitely think, you know, seeing contests where the braggots do stand out. I was happy to win that Domrus Cup first place for a braggot this year. And
yes, congratulations.
That's the first time I got in on that one and for braggot, and I'm just amazed at being able to work through some new inspirations, as it were.
Talk about that Carapils. Ryan was describing the one he's drinking tonight that you had made with some Carapils. Can you talk about that a little bit and tell us a little bit more about the recipe and how that came together?
Oh yeah, and not getting too much into that specific end of it. I tried experimenting with a lot of different dry malt extracts and looking at liquid extracts and whatnot. The Carapils is definitely something that's got that sweet combination. It actually blends really well. I definitely feel like that Pilsen also just in general at making more of a great base in which to stand out on specifically on placement of certain types of honey. I guess in that respect, it was like the polyflora and whatnot. Ironically, I believe the hops that I got was back from when you had the Iron B. We actually got some good sample Azacca hops, and I thought, wow, let's try this out, and seemed like it worked pretty well. I just feel like the advice you've given on just subtle nuances to putting things together, adding the honey at high Krausen, et cetera. Those things have been really, really helpful. So I guess I'm on the verge of just the starting point of maybe some new braggot experimentation a bit.
Yeah. Ryan, I didn't mean to steal the mic from you, but I wanted to hear more about that. About that one you were drinking.
No, so Nathan, was this a green, all green, or this an extract, or what'd you do? How'd you make this one?
Grain and extract. So
okay.
Steeping the grains as well as using extract. I did think using that the end of the polyflora, that Brazilian honey, definitely kind of taking a chance or a risk, I guess, outside of a lot of other honeys that you might particularly use, I guess, outside of like the buckwheat honeys and whatnot. Just trying to find something that I'd like to see kind of the experiment continue forward with that. So that's kind of where I was. Call it boredom, call it experimentation at the same time, but it was it's definitely something that I like putting together and sharing for sure.
Excellent. Now you do quite a bit of experimenting. Tell us a little bit about some of the experiments you've done. Maybe something that you think you're proud of, or maybe just something you think is most outlandish, and what your inspiration or thought process might have been behind it.
I don't think that I'm always like an originator of things. A lot of variety of different meat combinations and spices, herbs, you name it, have kind of been done, I guess. So I guess I do take inspiration even from some of the commercial meadery examples I've enjoyed. I guess, way back in the fall, I took a socially distanced trip with our current MHBA club president, Nick Eschbrenner, down to Moose Sparkling Wine Company down in Jordan, Minnesota. If you've never visited Jordan, Minnesota, please do so. It's charming. Shout out to Josie Boyle and the folks at Moose Sparkling Wine Company. They had a grape harvest, and we got to visit their winery, sample some of the ciders and champagnes they're working on, as well as a relatively new niche business. And in the process, I brought back some buckets of grape pomace. So this is like fresh grapes minus the juice, mostly stems, seeds, and the skins. Lost Cause Meadery, ironically out of San Diego, prior to this had made a mead that they called Salvage, which is orange blossom, Albarino Chardonnay, Grenache, grape skin pomace. Very exotic to a degree. It's an inspiration for me to try several different types of honey combinations with this pomace that I got from the winery down in Jordan. And, just see what happened with that. Been collecting some honey, and time to try out that mustard blossom in the polyflora, Brazilian rainforest, and others. And I was enjoying the combinations and appreciating the experiment. And it's just aging it on that grape pomace that supposedly was improving the mouthfeel and doing something that maybe raised a little bit of the tartness because of the type of pomace that I was using at the time. So had a lot of fun with that, in particular, just because I had a variety of traditional meads going that I wanted to see what that would do in transformation. So I guess it's a continued experiment. It's worked out pretty well. And yeah, I got really into the flavors that we were getting, in addition to what I could expect from the traditional. So That's one aspect. Obviously, mead projects being what they are, experimental modes that sauna meads, kind of continue to work on those a bit,
Sauna mead.
I guess
I have this vision of Nathan sitting in his sauna with one of those white towels around his waist, kneeling, kind of bending over and staring at the airlock on the 5-gallon fermentation bucket in front of him.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, Kavaikis, you got to watch it, but Orleans and whatnot. I guess some of them, don't need quite. It wasn't up there in the 100-degree plus area for some of the. Some of these, but using the sauna for maybe other than what it was intended for initially.
There you go. Sauna beer. Yeah, kill two birds with one stone. Take a hot sauna and brew beer at the same time.
Oh yeah,
good stuff. Good stuff, Nathan.
And I do appreciate that whole. I guess I am trying out. I hate to say bench trials are a bit further out, but I am kind of looking at combining some of that Trebbiano grapes, maybe cooking some things down and trying to make more of a balsamic inspired, mead, but not necessarily something that tastes like salad dressing.
Yeah, how would you approach something? How would you? I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, like I said, I love a good balsamic vinegar. I mean, sometimes it's like buying a good bourbon. Sometimes. Or actually a tequila rather. I shouldn't say bourbon because there's some really good bourbons out there that are like less than $30. Tequilas, on the other hand, not so much. If you want a good one, sometimes you really got to spend some money. But balsamic kind of runs along the same lines a little bit. It's a hit or a miss. I mean, you can spend a lot of money on a balsamic that's all not all that good, but. For the most part, I think you're going to pay a little more for a good, decent balsamic. So, how would you go about incorporating those kinds of flavors into a mead? And I mean, what would be the expectation there? I think.
Well, So how does this work out exactly? I guess I did watch a little bit of those programs about with balsamic has this battery of barrel aging process, sort of like the Polish meads to a degree. I don't want to say that it's like that directly, but they've got all these barrels that are some are over 250 years old.
Oh yeah,
continuously being used for the fermentating bacteria and aging process. They've got this open rectangular top end, and they start with that mother barrel of sorts, usually like a mulberry wood, and then they've added cooked Trebbiano grapes, the white grapes, and then successive level of time period goes into other barrels. It's a slow cooking process. I am going to try to attempt something like this, but eventually the vinegar gets viscous. I'm not making vinegar, but they use like maybe other barrels, a chestnut, cherry tree, juniper tree, and maybe a finish at an oak, evaporation, oxidation. I'm looking at. I'm not looking at waiting 6 to 12 years to enjoy it, of course. So, many of these others, they'll use those grapes, and I feel like it's just generally looking at taking some variety of staves from these individual unique woods in maybe gallons representation from a base of, say, like acacia honey or other varietals for maybe 2 to 3 months. Then another 6 months, and maybe beyond that, perhaps a year to see where it will best finish up. I guess if I get the base down, I can consider adding some fruit into it in doses at some point in time. But it's just I think by having that, I'm not going to get the 250-year-old barrel to try this out with. So I don't think I'd necessarily want to use it either. Just on that end. But I have tried maybe the chestnut tannin,
I'm thinking, for our listeners out there, I mean, when we're talking about balsamic vinegar, I think we're talking about the sweeter ones. There's different kinds of, styles or whatever. And I'm not all that into balsamic. I just know good ones from bad ones pretty much. Mm-hmm. But the sweeter ones is what I'm thinking here. And, using, aging wood. And I'm not quite sure how you go. I mean, here's the other thing too. All right. Suddenly these salted beers appeared on the market.
Goza.
Yeah.
The Goza,
So that's, to me, that's kind of an extreme. All right, balsamic vinegar probably isn't all that far off from a salted beer. So and just incorporating that balsamic into the recipe somehow. I'm not quite sure at what point you would try to do that, whether it be on a wooden stave soaked in balsamic vinegar, or just adding balsamic vinegar to the boil, to the secondary. I have no idea.
I'm thinking. I mean, I did try out just to see if I even like to pair this to begin with, just with some different aged balsamics, and then I just thought, well, I know I could probably blend out a sweet traditional with some tartaric acid and try to figure out how the secret sauce, so to speak, with, but I'm getting like cooked Trebbiano juice, cooking it up, and trying to mimic those barrel aging with the woods and try to see maybe a blending process, because it sort of seems like that may be getting me near to it without it being, I'm drinking a bottle of balsamic vinegar, even if it is so sweet, and we're in the sugar belt here too. So I could do that with a nice caprese salad, I'm sure. But I want to try it out, see what it's worth. So
Ryan, I can't wait for the experiment to come around.
There's so many that have bourbon flavoring of balsamics too, JD. A whole new area to try. So
well,
I know it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you've never had balsamic, it might be a wake up call. It's people talk vinegar. It's not like vinegar. This is something that's got a whole lot more flavor, character, and there's different kinds of balsamics out there. And let me tell you, go to an Italian.
A lot of them are like flavored, like fruited.
Yes.
Like fig, like they're syrupy, right?
Yes.
Like fig balsamic vinegar.
Yes.
Or pear balsamic vinegar.
Yes, very much so.
Things like that.
Yep. Yeah. But go to an Italian restaurant sometime and order a caprese salad, and start there. Okay, and then go to a little specialty store somewhere, and look at their balsamic vinegar line, and you might be surprised at the number of different, like Ryan says, some of them are fruit infused. I mean, it runs the gamut. Like olive oils, okay? I mean, you can get garlic olive oil, thyme infused olive oil. I mean, you name it. All different kind of olive oils out there, same thing. So interesting concept though, Ryan. Working in a balsamic vinegar into a mead somehow.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's the first time I heard that one. So that was we've heard a lot of stuff over the last 200 episodes.
Jeff, our resident scientist / BJCP, Jeff, is there anything scientifically that you know of that would impact a mead using balsamic vinegar? I mean, you're kind of the science guy here. Do you know of anything off the top of your head that might interfere or cause something to go haywire with balsamic vinegar?
Other than, as long as it's, what do I want to say, like stable, so to speak, there's no mother in it that would then go and start like the Acetobacter process with the meat itself, then I wouldn't think so. Truth be told, balsamic is kind of its own thing in the vinegar world that I'm, like you guys have just been saying, there are so many different flavors and different variations on it that it's a little hard to say. What this makes me think of, though, did either of you guys have any of the switchel that we had at the first Iron Bee?
I don't recall what that was.
The switchel is like, essentially, it was kind of like a soft drink. It was like a fruity drink, but it had vinegar incorporated into it.
I remember somebody talking about it, but I don't recall having it. I don't know, Ryan.
So we had a sponsor Superior Switchel, and they had donated a couple of cases, and they had like one of them was like a honey cinnamon, and another one like a lemon lavender, and essentially, yeah, it's kind of a vinegar, like a vinegar based carbonated drink, and
interesting.
The idea is that keeps you carbonated, and or keeps you hydrated, and I guess is pretty good for you, and whatnot. So anyway, it was great stuff. I recommend you check out Superior Switchel, and try them out if you're looking for kind of a non-alcoholic drink every once in a while.
Yeah, no. From my recollection of that, it was just very. I would almost call it like vinegar spiked as opposed to vinegar based, because it wasn't a really strong vinegar flavor, but it was enough to be pronounced, and it was actually really light and refreshing in a way that surprised me. I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I probably had 2 or 3 of those over the course of the day. They were nice.
Well,
so.
Nathan, I'm looking forward to the experiment.
Oh yeah.
Same.
Well, I mean, like Jeff was saying, I guess traditionally acetic acid is usually a fault in meat making, and so you're trying to, in vinegar making, it's excellent. But
Yeah.
I guess there is that fine line. So I'm interested to figure out, kind of the wood combinations here and see where it goes. So, some people just aren't into bourbon or tequila, JD, right?
Yeah,
or rather,
right,
they just
yeah.
haven't found the bottle that speaks to them yet, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. I got you there, man. Wow. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. We could probably spend a whole show just talking about how to make a balsamic vinegar mead, and
Yeah.
We went there.
before we do, maybe we should see anything else. Anything else, Nathan, that you think is interesting out there? You like I said, you dropped off quite the 8-pack there.
Octo.
Let's
Wow.
see. How about this? How about we bring it back full circle and end on your other braggot? I have not had this one yet. This is the next one I'm going to drink, but this was a mesquite and buckwheat honey smoked style braggot. I think that's those are my notes on it. Tell us about that one.
Just the smoke braggots is the Patria Funicite Dolce, and my little Latin take on things. The smoke is sweet. I made mesquite honey and buckwheat honeys at a high Krausen, combining some Pilsen and amber malts with the buckwheat honey as well. The Yarillo hops on that one is a citrus tropical, kind of give the banana orange pear herbal spiciness. So did a hop stand for 2 minutes at the end on that one. I used about 8 ounces of that.
Oh, nice.
Hops in a bag, and then took it out, and 90-minute main work boil process, adding the grain smoked at the beginning. So I was really happy to work on that. Is just kind of thinking about what I could combine. I think in particular, because I like mesquite honey as well as buckwheat honey, and then combining that and kind of adding some smoke, seeing what it would do. And that one was pretty decent. Actually turned into a winner at Domras, so was happy about it. But just for me, trying to try something out. In the pandemic, we had a bottle swap. And I made a different version of that one with some different kind of hops back in November, and the group seemed to like that quite a bit. So I get inspiration to continue on with that experiment in different various additions. So it was something fun. I kind of think it's just, I mean, when you can enjoy something and kick back with it, not get overloaded by it. It's not a stacked strength braggot or anything by any means. So just liking the nuances of everything you can pick up in it. And that's really where it stood out for me. So, yeah.
Now,
got a little bit of everything.
Now, the mesquite honey, Nathan, the mesquite that I get out here from Trader Joe's is not, it's like a 50% blend.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it has some nice notes, that peppery notes that you usually get from a mesquite. Now, are you using like 100% mesquite honey?
As far as what I understand, I don't have a pollen report per se, but these were from, I guess, when we had some AMMA sales with, I guess, beef specialty and whatnot. We had some different things. So from what I understand, that is not a blend by any means. That's a straight up varietal. So,
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I believe back at the first Iron B, I was hanging out with Josh Holbrook, and we were using. I had made a mesquite with starfruit that he particularly liked, and I guess just there's so much you can do with that honey, and not to play favorites. There's so many honeys out there too.
Oh God, yeah, you think?
I mean,
wow.
I guess that's the other thing I've just been enjoying the pandemic is just saying, what can I sample?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of honey out there. So,
Well, I think you get a lot of inspiration by sampling, and maybe this was a good chance to do that. I mean, we get caught up in our everyday life outside the pandemic. I mean, before all this started, sometimes we kind of overlook those smaller details that, we certainly could have taken advantage of any time, but maybe didn't have the time or whatever. Or even the expense, I guess. Maybe that played a part. I don't know. But I think so far as the pandemic, I mean, a lot of people got locked down, locked in, and hibernated. This may be an opportunity. This is not the last show that we'll do on this series, but we're talking to folks and finding out what they did, what they did differently, or during this pandemic, did it cause them to do things differently, or did they take advantage of the downtime and brew more and play with honeys more? These are, I don't know that we have time during our, pre-pandemic to get involved in all of this. I think this pandemic might have given us opportunities that we didn't have before.
Absolutely. And I don't consider myself a mad meat scientist per se,
Right.
But I do enjoy it, and I think that I always think it's really best even during this time. It was like maybe a better suited idea is just for mead bakers to maybe try to get yourself a barrel and consider aging something today, as the march of time is indeed defendable. Sure. Even if one mead maker's traditional is going to be another mead maker's base for something new, if not at least a perfect tenderizer for grilling something, I guess. Keep working on it. Make your next bench trial a comfortable one. After all, lifting the barrels could be hard on your back, I guess.
Yeah.
We're all trying to do something different, and I think when you have some downtime, it's nice, and my mind kind of works in a mysterious way of trying to think about, what else could I do? What other things might be next to try. So that's just it. Keeping active, as it were.
Ryan, we got to get this guy on again.
Oh yeah, we will. Hey Nathan, we gotta let you go here in just a minute. But before you go, I just wanted to ask you, did you try the Ryan Braggot that I had slipped in your 4-pack there?
Yes, indeed, I did. That's the orange. Is that what you're referring to? Orange peel?
Right. Yes.
Absolutely. Wonderful effervescence. Yes. Always a pleasure. I mean, this is kind of in a way, it's kind of I would say it's more like the champagnes of braggots too, just because of the punch and the the effervescence I get.
Wait a minute. Are you
really
calling it my braggot a high life?
Maybe not in this edition, but it was definitely. I guess I definitely had a pop to it. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
We got to be careful. That might be a copyrighted phrase.
No, the idea with that is to highly carbonate, dare I say over carbonate, because what it does is if you drink that out of as you're drinking that, it should be just pushing all of those aromatics right up in your nose.
Oh yeah, and believe
you
me,
pick up a little more of that.
It absolutely did. I thank you for it. It's that punch of the orange and the citrus that just definitely runs the gamut for sure.
Nathan Stegman, man, I miss you guys up there, and
ditto, JD.
My God, I have to make a return to Minnesota. There's a whole crew of you up there that I would desperately like to see again. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, Nathan. Really appreciate it. And
anytime,
Ryan. Again, we need to have him back, and I'd like to see where this whole balsamic thing is going to go. I
like gardening, so we're gonna grow some good basil this summer, I'm sure, and see what we can do with some nice Roma tomatoes out there, maybe some heirlooms to try to mix it up a bit with the mozzarella. So
there you go. There you go. Giving me reason to come back. Giving me a reason to come back up to Minnesota, I'll tell you.
We'd love to have you.
All right. Nathan, thanks so much. We've got to say goodnight, but come back again soon, will you please?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and I'll keep listening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Nathan Stegman. I tell you, what a guy! He's just a great guy. If you ever meet him in person, ever get the opportunity to meet him in person, you'll wanna hang out with this guy. He's just a cool guy to be with, and I remember meeting up with him there at that first Iron Bee up there in Minnesota, and I think very highly of the man. He's very good at what he does. And puts a lot of thought into his recipes, Ryan. Really thinks hard about what he's doing, I think.
Absolutely. He's he is one of the most creative, mead makers I know. He's also probably one of the most active mead makers I know in some of these things that he does. So. I was going to say, working from home probably just umped his production because he just had more time to baby the yeast.
Yeah.
And, he could, no problem degassing, quite a bit either. So, great guy, great mead maker. Glad to have him on the show. Glad to have, a fridge full of his meads and glad that we were able to get him back on.
Jeff, there's probably one or two listeners out there that are going to be in their mid to late 20s, maybe even 30s, who have no clue who MacGyver was. They've just probably heard older people talking about it and probably scratched their head wondering, what the hell are they talking about? MacGyver. This was, my dad was a MacGyver guy. My uncles were MacGyver guys. Mm-hmm. I grew up being a MacGyver guy. I mean, there was just times when you had to reach for the baling wire and gray tape and make something work. And this is what MacGyver was all about. This was a TV series. Back in the 60s or 70s, I think, late 70s maybe.
70s, 80s, yeah.
Yeah. And this guy would get into precarious, situations where you know, he didn't go in armed with a pair of 6-shooters and knives and rocket launchers and all that. He depended upon what was in his pockets or what was on the ground or on a shelf or in a closet or whatever to put together some kind of thing, okay, to get him out of trouble that he found himself getting into. So how does that work into what we're talking about here? You take it from there.
So I read this great article on craft beer and brewing that I sent you guys, and man, the article went through all kinds of different stuff. There was like the standard toolkit for breweries. You know, they've got the green scrubby, they've got the hydrometers and the refractometers, and you know all the tools and stuff. And then you get about halfway through the article and they're like, okay, let's talk about the stuff that we've improvised. And God, they were talking about all kinds of fun stuff, like using a penny to fudge like some gaskets or something like that.
I read. Oh my God, yeah, some crazy stuff.
You know, the spirit of a home brewer, I think, is, you know, you're in this situation where you're doing your brewing thing, and you kind of go, wow, this requires a solution. The ideal tool is not at hand or has not been invented yet, but there's a level of cleverness and ingenuity that you have to just kind of summon up to figure out, okay, what do I have? How can I make this work?
Yeah.
And, you know, I had two examples. I think I've talked before. I had a solution that I came up with for heat control for my Kvike brews, where I'm trying to keep it like, you know, between 95, 110, somewhere in there, just depending on what I'm making and what I'm brewing at that time. And what I figured out was actually, it was a little bit fiddly. I wound up taking my sous vide stick and putting that into a big tub full of water that I had all my fermenters in at the same time. So most of the liquid in that tub was actually like in the fermenters. There wasn't a lot of water that I was heating itself. And I think that was part of the key, what made it successful. I set that guy upright in like a one of those stainless steel hop filter kind of, you know, you set it in the side of the kettle while you're boiling, just to keep the hops all contained there. That let me keep that stick submerged enough that it was getting enough water circulating without having to risk it falling over or something like that going on. But I was able to keep like 110 degrees solid for a good week or so while that Kvike was doing its thing and fermenting out, and it worked out great. Was rather impressed with myself.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the pandemic, you know, I've been home a lot more. We were talking with Chip last week, and I mentioned, you know, when you put the dry malt extract into a kettle, especially during the boil part, you get all that powder, and it can kind of do that foam over where the boiling water and all the powder just kind of combines into this big bubbly mess.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had that hit your stove?
Yes.
Yeah. I have too. A couple times.
Oh, God, yes.
Like, my stove was, it's that like glass flat top that was really, really high tech and cool like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And when you get burnt crud on that, especially burnt malt, it just sticks. And you get this nasty black ring around the burner part of that glass. Like, yeah. I swear, I've taken a scouring pad and that cleaner stuff and literally just spent almost an hour trying to get that crud off, and gave up with a little bit still there. But it's like, okay, this is good enough. My arm hurts. I'm done.
Yeah.
I discovered the perfect solution for that, and I was so pleased with myself over the pandemic. It turns out the scouring pad that I was using, you know, the kitchen scouring pad, they actually make a thicker version of that, the green, which is kind of the medium, and I think the red is the coarser one. But they make that in like a 1/2-inch scouring pad in a 5-inch circle with Velcro on the back that fits right on my orbital hand sander.
Oh, dude. Oh, wow.
What used to take me an hour and left me with meh results now takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's funny. This article on Beer and Brewing talks about power tools. Using power tools. I mean, the cordless drill. I mean, I think that's probably a, what would you call it? I mean, that's something that's on the shelf in your brewery, right? A power drill. I mean, whether it's a cordless or one you got to plug in. I mean, what better way to degas, 5 gallons of mead or than to use a power drill,
Right.
How about mixing up your must,
And if you got a grinder, you hook the power drill up to your grain mill to get that going faster, so you're not spending literally an hour grinding grain too.
Yeah.
To make a braggot. Yep. The power drill is kind of one of those jack of all trades tools that really comes in handy all around.
My MacGyvering started out when I started mead making. Okay, when I made a lot of mistakes and along the way, and then discovered that you need to control the temperature somehow. So it's like, okay, how do we cool this down? So the old standby is soak the bath towel without the wife knowing it in water, and then hang it over your vessel, and then get the fan out of the bedroom and point it towards the what I mean, while it's still sitting, you drape part of the towel in this little tub of water so it's like a wick. Okay, right. Well, that only works so good. I mean, that's I guess in a pinch, you can get down to a few degrees, but that's where I started, okay? And then from there, it went MacGyver-ish like you wouldn't believe. And I went to the hardware store, and one idea that I had was, I kept thinking about cooling. Well, what's inside of an air conditioner? Coils of copper tubing.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I thought, well, okay, so what if I just pump cold water through coils of copper tubing? I mean, what does copper tubing cost? Okay, so I went to the hardware store, and I don't remember what diameter I bought, but it doesn't matter from here. But I got a couple of coils of copper tubing, and I thought, well, this is a piece of cake. Okay, so I wrapped the coils around the glass carboy. All right. And then I hooked a water pump up to it, and I just circulated water, cool water. At this point, it wasn't ice water or anything. It was just cool water. It acted more like a heat sink because, remember, fermentation generates heat. So one way to cool it down is to build a heat sink, which would be copper coils with water circulating through it. Not hot water, obviously. The whole idea is to cool. So, and if you've got enough coils, okay, it will kind of cool itself. It'll take care of itself. So that's how I started. And then from there, it went to, I need to get the temperature even lower, okay? And then it went to the cooler, the Coleman cooler. Okay, and I bought these gallon-size Tupperware containers. I have a little apartment-sized freezer here in our place, and I started manufacturing my own ice, my own 1 gallon size chunks of ice. And I would put it in this Coleman cooler. Well, now I can circulate really cold water through this copper tubing. Mm-hmm. And that brought the temperature down even more. Okay, the ensuing problem was, man, you had to make ice like every other day. Okay, and it was really getting old. And so then I thought, well, how can I alleviate this? Well, then I got a bigger, better cooler. It was a Pelican cooler. Now I could make enough ice to put in this thing where I didn't have to change the ice but every 6 to 7 days. All right, and I could have 35-degree water circulating through this copper tubing. Well, one thing led to another, and I kept reading about these glycol chillers that, they sell for $1,000 or more. And I thought, man, that's a lot of money to suck into this, little 2-bit operation I got.
That sure is.
And I thought, okay, what's the equivalent here? So I don't know where I found this, but what I wound up getting is a hydroponics system, a cooler. Now, cold water is better for plants than warm water. Okay, talk to your hydroponics guy, and he'll explain that to you. I ain't got time to do that now, but so I went to a hydroponics store, and I bought a used water chiller. Now, this thing goes down to 35 degrees. And it's a half horsepower system, whatever that means as far as cooling goes. But here's the bottom line: I have 2 of the stainless steel 7-gallon fermenters. All right, both of them have chiller tubes that go down inside. I'm able to cool both of those, okay, down to about 58 degrees or so. 55 degrees even on occasion, both of them at the same time with this system that I got. And it's just basically recirculating cold water. You have you need a very small water reservoir, which is basically like a 4-gallon or a 3-gallon little Coleman cooler. All right, that's where my pump sets in. That feeds the 2 fermenters, and then of course the water circulates between the chiller and this Coleman cooler, and so you're able to chill this water down to a point where you can lager with this thing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I wound up. So that's my story as far as my MacGyvering. I want to hear what Ryan has done as far as his MacGyvering.
Well, I like MacGyver. The for the reason that in the show, Angus MacGyver, the title character, was raised in Minnesota. He is a Minnesotan. That and the fact that he can defuse a nuclear bomb, in the back of a Jeep off road with a paperclip.
Yep.
And build and take a handheld fan and an ironing board and build a wave runner, are also pretty cool. A lot of my MacGyvering has been like out of necessity, like all of us here. What can you do out of necessity, and what can you do with what you have? I had a plastic fermenter with a rubber kind of a rubber gasket kind of head on it, and you'd push it on there, and then it had a little hole for the stopper, the drilled stopper, and the airlock. Well, it must have been worn out or something like that, or maybe it wasn't just a very high quality one. And I remember the pressure just kept pushing that lid off, just pushing the top down, the top right off of the fermenter. So picture like kind of a big mouth bubbler, if any of you guys have seen something similar to that.
Yeah.
And so similar, but it just kept pushing it off. So I'm looking around, what can I do? And I grabbed some painter's tape, and I taped the top down with painter's tape just to keep it going, so I wouldn't have to siphon it out and put it in a different fermenter just to keep it airtight. So that was it, popped out of my head. That was like kind of a little cheesy little thing that I had to do. But I also I'm a big fan of using gravity to to transfer my needs into other vessels versus having to use the auto siphon.
Yeah.
So I took a kettle, one of the kettles I had before I had a nice kettle. Now I've got a really nice kettle from some of our friends at Stout Kettles. I broke down and got one of those. But I took a kettle I had, and I put a spigot. I drilled a hole and put a spigot like an inch up from the bottom of the kettle, or and I would actually it's lower than that because this was just I wanted to boil, right? I wanted to boil in there, and then I wanted to be able to get it into the fermenter, so then I could put a hose on the bottom of the spigot and put it on the table, and then run that hose into there. And then I got another idea, and I said, for some of these, I kind of want to do. Maybe I'll even primary in one of these. Like I can do the quick boil, and then I can fill it, and I can ferment it right in this thing. So it had a lid. I don't want to say a failed experiment. Let's just say it was what it was. And I had the kettle. Now it's got the spigot in the bottom of it. Had a lid. I welded the these little like U grooves, or U on top of it, and then on the bottom part, a little ring that I could put a bolt and a wing nut on. So now I can actually like tighten the top down and make sure that nothing, it's not going to come up. And then cut another little hole in the top, just wide enough to put a little tiny gasket on, or a rubber gasket, and then an airlock.
Like a grommet, yeah, okay.
Grommet, yeah. So I could, thank you, grommet, yeah. So I could essentially, the thought was, hey, I can boil in this thing, put a wort chiller in there, right? Fill it down, take it out, tighten, pitch the yeast, tighten the top, put the airlock on it, do the primary fermentation right in there, and then put the hose on the spigot and take it right into like a bottling bucket or a carboy if you're into a secondary.
Yeah.
And so did that. That was mixed results, but probably just because I think the theory is solid. I think that the application of some of my skills might have been sophomoric. And
well, at least you had. At least you did. You had an opportunity to MacGyver, I guess.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know if it considers MacGyvering, but I do a lot of the experimental stuff. Like I try a lot of the things, talking about like in the fermenter, like, oh, what can we put in the fermenter to try to create a flavor profile? Maybe some molasses, maybe some, if you want to thin it out a little bit, maybe some corn syrup or something like that. And, or maybe some, when you're bottling, oh, we'll use cherry juice as a priming sugar, or we'll use some things like that. So, interesting stuff. Always fun to try. I mean, the thing is, it's try out all kinds of stuff, check it out, see what happens, and learn for the next time, I guess.
Well, here's a thought for some of our listeners out there. I've talked about my aquariums here at my place, and I've got one big aquarium that has an automatic fish feeder on it. It's timed. It has it's battery operated, and you can set it to occur once every 24 hours. So one time a day, it rotates and drops food into the tank for me. So if you can figure out how to use that, okay, to add your yeast nutrients, because you can actually time this thing to occur like once today or once every other day or once on, 2 days from now, or whatever you want. Basically, it's got, like a calendar function on it. So if any of our listeners can figure out how that works, there's another MacGyver out there for you. But hey, good stuff. MacGyver all the way. Great tape and baling wire. I grew up on this stuff. We need to, before we end this show, we have to get in some of the social club. Otherwise, our listeners will kill us all. But this is the section where we try to answer questions from mead makers with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house. And some of these questions have absolutely run the gamut over the last, 195 episodes. And we love this part of the show. Roy Baker picked up some...
Can I tee this one up?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to read it, and then just a little bit of commentary here.
All right.
Roy Baker picked up some turbo yeast a few weeks ago. I was thinking of making a 5-gallon batch of mead with it. Have any of you had any experience with this? By the way, so we've come across similar questions, and at some point early in everybody's mead making career, you're either in the homebrew shop or you're online at the brew supply website, and you come across distiller's yeast.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. Turbo yeast is distiller's yeast, and it's the stuff that says on there like it can ferment to 15% alcohol in 48 hours. Or has a 20%, alcohol tolerance and can reach that in 3 days or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to frame that up. And then I'm going to just completely say that I have not used distiller's yeast before. I've never used any turbo yeast is, I think, a brand, but I've never used any form of distiller's yeast before. And, some people say that, like 1118 is designed to turn sugar into alcohol. Well, that's adorable when you consider what distillery yeast is designed to do. So I'm going to go to Jeff, because Jeff, I think has a little more knowledge on distiller's yeast and what it might do in a wash. I mean a must for you.
You're calling it a wash is not far off, because it's a distiller's yeast. I've had to talk people down from this great idea a few times before when I was working at a homebrew store. It seems like a great idea in concept because you get all this alcohol, all this. It's such a rapid pace that what could go wrong? The issue is you're not going to distill your mead afterwards, I assume. I mean,
the average person.
Yeah.
The average person is looking to make, a really strong hooch. They're not looking to make, the distilled mead. The major problem with distiller's yeast is that, the EC1118, the K1V, those champagne yeasts that put out a lot of alcohol, they still do that to make something drinkable. The distiller's yeast, on the other hand, makes alcohol hell for leather, but it also throws all kinds of other nasty stuff that frankly is going to be lost in the distillation process, so no one cares. Things like heavy alcohols, a lot of the fusels, those really hot alcohols you taste on like McCormick or really spirits that they've been distilled a little bit, but not like really well filtered. That's going to be very prominent in there. You're going to have some off flavors from other compounds that just kind of get, they're not a complete fermented product, but they get kind of just thrown in there. The yeast doesn't eat them up and clean them up like like a good wine or a beer yeast will. So it's not the best way to go about it.
Doesn't sound like it. Unless you're making,
if
what
you're-
do they call that? Applejack or something? Is that that's the freeze thaw method that everybody's using. But
Oh yeah, you don't even want to do that with this because if you're going to freeze thaw the water out of it, you're still going to get all the extra nasty out of it too. Like you're just going to concentrate the nasty along with it.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
at the end of the day, if you really want a really high alcohol mead, you gotta either do a very nicely controlled and baby champagne yeast,
Yeah.
or get like some really neutral vodka and just spike it.
Does that pretty much take care of it, Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff might know more about this, but he said he's talked on a lot of people from this. I said I don't even know if like fermenting it on a stir plate would help at all.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at that myself, no. But I mean, this is the don't care, gonna eat it all kind of yeast that will throw everything else. I mean, we're talking fusels, those mercaptans that are they warn you about with bathtub gin. You're gonna get some of those.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, I remember my dad and my uncles making what they called bathtub beer back in the day, and I remember a lot of puking going on, during the weekend barbecues and stuff after drinking all that stuff. But anyway, hey, moving on. This one's from Stav Tree or whatever at the Reddit. Needing to keep a batch between 62 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but we need to get word to this guy to listen to the previous segment, okay, where I discussed the cooling system that I put together in different stages. And one of those stages may give you an idea there. He lives in South Carolina, and it gets warm down there. So he's dealing with, in an apartment with warm temperatures. So Stavro tree, listen carefully to the previous segment, and you'll learn a lot. Noah Kelso on micro meads and brewers. Jeff, anyone got any cheat sheets or equivalents or equations to? I swear I need new glasses. What I need to do is get this cataract surgery done. Cheat sheets or equations to roughly estimate how much honey per gallon. There's a couple of websites out there. I'd have, for example, a target ABV and a target ending gravity. So I think the bottom line here, Jeff, there's several websites out there, right, that can tell you this stuff.
I mean, I use a very rough rule of thumb of 35 points per pound per gallon. So, I mean, if you're doing 3 pounds in a single gallon, roughly that brings you to like 1105 ish. This is a really rough rule of thumb. If you're doing that in 2 gallons, have that, because you've only got it's essentially like 1.5 pounds per gallon, if you're following. I really like Brewer's Friend has it's a beer recipe builder, but they have honey as an available.
Yes, they do.
Fermentable.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a real quick and dirty way to just throw in, if I want to guesstimate how much I'm going to take for, bringing a recipe from 8% to 10%, right there. Now, he mentions he likes to have things on a sweeter side. I will tell you, the more you mess with this, the really ideally what I would do is create a recipe where you're going to hit your target ABV at absolute dryness and then stabilize, back sweeten to the level of sweetness you want. That way you're always hitting your target alcohol and you're not kind of guessing, because sometimes the yeast will get a little crazy. They'll go a little overboard. You'll end up dry and you'll have to go get more honey to sweeten it up to the level you want. Sometimes the yeast kind of goes, I can't be bothered. and your ABV ends up a little low because you're the starting mead maker and something happened. So I would go for just enough honey to make your target ABV. Plan on stabilizing, back sweetening, and that's going to get you right where you want it every time without a lot of fuss or fuss.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to throw this next one over to Ryan's table. This is Martin Powell on Mead Homebrew. Ryan, he says, he just bought a breakfast stout beer making kit, cheap, for the 3.8 liter glass carboy. And now I'm thinking maybe I should try to make a braggot. Does anyone have a nice, simple recipe or any advice? Ryan, you're just the man.
Well, I think we should. First of all, I don't know exactly what he means by breakfast beer. Did he say breakfast beer?
Breakfast stout beer, I guess.
Breakfast stout. Yeah, I mean the big one out there is called is the Founders brand. So Founders Brewing Company.
Yep.
The Canadian breakfast stout. I think that's probably the more popular one. I think there's the CBS is the big one, and it's a stout that's made kind of with coffee and chocolate, and then I think they age it in a bourbon barrel, and then they add like maple syrup to it. So you've kind of got like coffee and chocolate and coffee, chocolate, bourbon, and maple syrup. That's what comes to mind for me is the Canadian breakfast stout. There might be other ones out there. Oh, I guess the KBS too.
Okay, yeah.
Which is the Kentucky stout, but I don't think they call it a breakfast stout. I think that's just kind of a Kentucky bourbon stout.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, regardless. Okay, so that's what we've got here with a stout. Thinking of making it a braggot. Is there a nice simple recipe? Any advice? Okay, I'd start with let's like deconstruct that a little bit. Let's say you've got a stout base. Take your stout beer base, then add in some honey. So you could kind of Ryan braggot this if you wanted, or go from there. But you buy an extract or follow a Greenville on a nice stout you like, or get stout like the stout extract mix, and then actually Brew Firm I think even has like a Belgian stout. Add your honey, and then you could steep in some coffee beans. You could steep in some or dry hop with coffee beans, or you could steep in or dry hop like some Meridian Hive, cocoa nibs. Drop in a bourbon stave or an oak spiral that you soaked in bourbon, and then now here's the tricky part. The tricky part is the maple syrup, because maple will ferment all the way out.
Yep.
And so here's what I'm thinking is you can add that maple syrup way on the back end, or add as much as you want on the back end. But then I haven't done this, so I don't know what it's going to leave you. But let's just say you're bottle conditioning. Use the maple syrup, put some maple syrup in the back end, but then maybe also use some maple syrup as your priming sugar.
Oh yeah.
And see if you can capture some of that, and maybe you'll end up, like I said, I think a braggot out of this sounds real nice. But you can end up, again, if you want to go with the breakfast stout of the stout braggot. So your stout, your braggot, you steep in some coffee, some chocolate, a bourbon barrel stave or soaked bourbon oak spiral, and then some maple syrup, and you might have a handful of key holders over for breakfast.
There you go. Hey, we have run out of time here at the Meat House. That's going to be it for this episode. But I'll tell you, thanks for hanging out with us tonight in episode number 195. I can't believe we are this far along, guys. My Lord. I don't know what we've got planned for episode 200, but we got to do something. But hey, a big thank you out there to Nathan Stegman. I tell you, this dude is like a mead maker extraordinaire, medal winner, and just a master mead maker. And thanks, Nathan, for spending some time with us here at the house this episode. And hey, if you want to get on the show, it's really easy. All you got to do is let us know what you're brewing out there. Email us, info at the Meat House. Let's see if I can get this right. Since I screwed up the beginning part of the show. At least I can blame it on technology. This is new damn mixer I'm working with. But hey, if you want to get on the show, it's easy enough. Hey, just let us know. Email us, info@themeathouse.com, or send us a message on that Facebook deal or Twitter thing, both at the Mead House. And we will set up a date and talk to you about your brewing projects and get you on the air. So in the meantime, happy mead making out there. That's it for this episode. Ryan, you know the drill, buddy. Flip the lights off, and Jeff, slam that door shut. Hey, we'll be back next week with episode number 196 of The Meat House. We're gone.